Good evening. Welcome to the Free Thought Forum for Tuesday, May 28th. Now, today this is a call-in show, and we have our phone number up there if you want to give us a call and participate. If you have any questions for us or you want us to explain anything, feel free to give us a call. I'm George Zerba. This is my wife, Pam.
Hello.
And Pam's going to start us off by telling us some of the things that are going on in the atheist community.
Well, Pennsylvania Nonbelievers is really, really busy, has been busy the last couple of weeks, and is very busy going into June. So we thought you'd like to know about some of the things that are going on. Not to dwell on the past, but we have had some events already. We were at the York Street Fair on Mother's Day, and last Saturday, a bunch of guys, George was one of them, marched in the Anvil Memorial Day Parade with our banner. And one of the reasons we do that is to reinforce the idea that there are, in fact, atheists who are in the armed forces, and that not all people believe in God when they're in a foxhole. A lot of our atheists are not.
There are atheists in foxholes, yes.
That is correct. Now, coming up, we have some very exciting things. Next Saturday, we have our meeting in York. That's at the Unitarian Universalist Church in their room behind the main church on South George Street. And what we're having is a wonderful documentary from the 1960s that talks about the school prayer decisions. This is the 50th anniversary of the two major school prayer decisions, one of which is here from Pennsylvania, Abington versus Shemp, and then of course there's the famous one from Maryland, which is Cutler versus Curlett versus Murray. But in honor of the anniversary of prayer, we have a couple of exciting things going on. First of all, at the York meeting, we're going to show the documentary, a CBS Reports, if you're old enough to remember those old documentaries. It's really interesting. It's interesting sociologically just because, boy, were we a lot smarter 50 years ago. This documentary goes into detail. It's not 2-minute sound bites. It's long exposition, that sort of thing. Also is an interesting reminder of how white and male television was. Madalyn Murray O'Hair makes a tremendous impact in the documentary, I think at least in part because she's the only woman you see just about. The other thing we're doing is that we have asked, and Representative Mark Cohen has agreed, to support a resolution, propose a resolution before the Pennsylvania legislature, and it's called the Public School Religious Freedom Month, honoring the decision, because the Shemp case was in fact in Pennsylvania. Right now there are 7 co-sponsors, 1 Republican, 6 Democrats. In honor of that decision, Dr. Ellery Shemp, who was one of the original plaintiffs in that case, is going to come to central Pennsylvania. On Sunday, June 9th, we're going to have an event for him at the Midtown Scholar Bookstore in Harrisburg. It's co-sponsored by Pennsylvania Nonbelievers and the ACLU, and Dr. Shemp will speak. That'll be interesting. And then on the next day, which is Monday, June 10th, the resolution will actually be introduced, and Dr. Shemp will have a press conference at 11 a.m. Public is welcome to both events. Both events are free of charge, and we hope that if this is an interesting issue for you, you'll come and listen to Dr. Shemp both times. So that gets us through mid-June, and then on June 22nd, we have our solstice party, because of course solstice is a great atheist holiday. We celebrate it in the winter, and we celebrate it in the summer, and this year, June 22nd, we're actually pretty close to it. Also, I skipped one thing on June 20th. I skipped a couple of things, now I look at my list. June 8th, we are going to be at Old Anvil Days Street Fair in Anvil, and that's always one of our more exciting events because it's one of our more recent events. Generally speaking, people get used to us after we've been in an event for a while. Yeah,
in York they're used to us. We don't get a lot of
Well, and you used to have some problems at that parade in Anvil.
Yes, we did. And the last time we did not have a lot of people yelling at us. There were a couple of them who yelled at us that we shouldn't be there. But we had, I think, more people clapping for us and saying thank you for coming than we did doing the opposite. So we're making progress. People are accepting that we're in the community, that we're here, and we're not going away.
And in Anvil last year, we had the same. So we had people who were very hostile, but we also had people who were very, very happy to see us, and they would kind of sidle over to the booth and say, boy, I'm really glad you're here. Kind of in a stage whisper because they didn't want their neighbors to know that they were happy that we were there. But anyway, it's a nice street fair. Even if you just like street fairs, you're looking for something to do on June 8th, come on up. I believe it's from 9 to 2. It closes a little earlier than some of them. And then on June 20th, we're going to be in Mechanicsburg at their Jubilee Day. This is on a Thursday, and if you're not familiar with it, it's an all-day event. They say it's the largest street fair on the East Coast. I can't
Largest one-day street fair.
Largest one day, excuse me.
Yeah.
Can't vouch for that, but it's a big fair.
Oh, yeah, it's a big fair, all right, yes.
Again, a fun thing to do. Obviously, it's a street fair, so it's free. You just get to walk around and eat the food and look at the vendors and come by and say hello to us. If you are in the neighborhood, we're always happy to meet our friends and admirers and talk to our enemies. So, again, feel free.
And we'll have two booths there. One where we sell our bumper stickers, another one where you can go off on the side and discuss things with people, or argue, as you know.
Depending.
If you want to have a discussion with someone, we have another booth set up there, so you can do that.
And if you go to our website, PANonbelievers.com, it will give you information about all our meetings. But we have meetings in York, in Annville, in Harrisburg, Lemoyne, in Lewisburg, in Chambersburg, and Lancaster. So if you are in central Pennsylvania, or if you know somebody, if you're watching this, you're probably in York, but if you know somebody who is in another part of central Pennsylvania who would like to find an atheist meeting to go to, we have them all over the place. So feel free to take a look, and again, we'd welcome you to come. So let's see what else is new right now. We have, those are our big upcoming events.
Yeah, now we have a big event coming up in September. You want to talk about that? That's our Pennsylvania State Atheist Humanist Conference, and we're selling tickets right now for that. You can go to our website and do that. Those of you who are familiar with the website, I'm not a website person.
Well, actually, the website for this event is atheist.pa.org. So you'd want to go to that website if you want more information about this event. But it is going to be really cool. It's in Philadelphia from September 13th through September 15th. It's at an Embassy Suites that is near the airport, so it's reasonably easy to get to. They tell us that there is another hotel nearby if the Embassy Suite is too expensive for you, but it's definitely worth going to. We have a great speaker list.
Yes. It's being sponsored by Pennsylvania Nonbelievers, the Free Thought Society of Philadelphia, Lancaster Free Thought Society, and a few other groups. So, well, let's see. Who we have speaking there? Some of the highlights would be, well, David Silverman from American Atheist, president of American Atheist. If you haven't heard Dave, he's a great speaker, a very personable guy. Just to meet him would be worthwhile coming down there. Now, from this area, we have Lori Lebo. And Lori wrote the book, The Devil in Dover, was the name of it. She'll be speaking to us. She's spoken to our group before. She does a great job. And I imagine she'll have some books there.
She probably will. She also now works with the ACLU, so she's there in that capacity as well.
Yeah, that's right. She helps them. We have a great speaker, Jerry DeWitt. If you haven't heard Jerry DeWitt, he is a former minister. He's part of the clergy project of American Atheists, where clergy who have seen the light and are no longer interested in promoting religion, we help them find other jobs and help them make the conversion.
And sometimes it's just somebody to talk to, because some of the clergy in that situation really can't just get up and leave their jobs. They've got a whole life that is dependent on their remaining in the clergy, but they don't really believe anymore. So this gives them support, helps them think of what their next option is. But George is right. Jerry DeWitt is a spectacularly good speaker. He's wonderful. Yes,
he gives now. Is he scheduled to do his sermon?
You know, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the plans are for him.
Because at the American Atheist Convention, he gave us a sermon on Sunday morning, which is Easter, and you can see why he was a successful preacher, because he can really rev up the crowd. He put on a great presentation, so he's really great. And well, we could just run down the list of speakers here. Jamila Bay, who's she's on National Public Radio.
Yeah, National Public Radio. I've seen her on MSNBC. Excellent speaker. And she's funny. I think sometimes people think that these events are just all dire and dark and oh my God, it's so awful. And no, we have a lot of fun. And Jamila Bay would fall into the fun category. She is a very funny speaker.
Yes, we should make because a lot of atheists are pretty straightforward and humorless people, and we're not all like that. And especially Jamila, she'll get you laughing. But just a quick rundown. Seth Andrews is going to be there. Rob Boston from Americans United for Separation of Church and State. He's a great speaker. And James Croft. J.T. Eberhard is a young person who runs one of the young organizations for atheists. Fred Edwards, Steve Hill, he's a comic. There's, once again, we get a little levity there. George Rabb, A.J. Johnson, who was formerly with American Atheists. Now she's with an organization called Be Secular. Amanda Knief from American Atheists. Tracy Lockwood. Teresa McBain, she's another ex-minister who's saw the light and is now on our side.
Yeah, one of the things about having the ex-ministers speak, mostly they can speak. They've had a great deal of experience talking to groups, and they're fun to listen to. They know how to present an idea and how to get the audience involved in their ideas. So they do a wonderful job.
Yeah, and then there's Joe Nickel, Shelley Siegel, Jamie E.M. Swiss, David Tamayo, and Dr. Joe Wenke.
Our mystery person who works on the program with us was telling me that Joe Nickel does things like investigating ghosts in houses, that sort of thing, from a scientific point of view. And he tries to stay very open-minded and go in to see exactly what's going on. Interestingly enough, he does not find ghosts. What a surprise. But again, these are all interesting, intelligent people. It's just a fun weekend where you get to spend a whole weekend thinking. Now, the convention itself is just the Saturday and Sunday, but if you come Friday night, Margaret Downey has her annual event about Friday the 13th, because we're meeting on a Friday the 13th. So she does, she inoculates people against superstition. So that's fun too.
Yeah.
So I think if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, again, go to atheist.pa.org and you can be a VIP. We'd love to have you be a VIP, but if you can just come for one day or just come as a regular attendee, you'll really enjoy it. You should really think about doing this.
Now Friday, along with Margaret's party, I understand there may be a special guest coming.
Oh, I didn't know that. How exciting.
Well, I don't know if we want to say who it is. But
no, I think we don't.
Yeah, because it's not confirmed yet. But we may be well worth your while to be there for that. Now, those are the upcoming events. And let's see, we have, well, there'll be some things later on. I guess we can get into that the next show, or the next couple of shows, because we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, all summer long we do a lot of street festivals and events. Yeah. So, in fact, if you know of a street festival or event and you haven't seen us there, you might want to let us know. You can contact us through our website, and if we can, we'll go. It's something we very much enjoy doing. Yeah.
If you want to join us at any of them, just stop by and help us out.
That's right. You can just say hello. You can pick up some of our material. Nobody has to know. If you're in a position where you don't want people to know, we won't tell anybody. And we have some great bumper stickers if you want to be that bold, and pins with nice little sayings on them, so you can stop by. You know, another thing we need to talk about is that one of the things that people say to atheists is that, okay, well, you don't like churches, but you have to admit churches do a lot of really good volunteer work. Well, there's an organization called Volunteers Beyond Belief, which organizes and helps non-believing groups that want to do charitable work. And we actually do have a charity that we do work for over the summer, and since you do it and I don't, you get to talk about it. Well, what we do is for the Margaret Mole Home, we man a concession stand at Revolutions games every so often. We did one last month, this month, and then we're going to be doing one again next month. And I think every month for the season we'll be doing one. But we help them in the concession stands, and the profits go to the Margaret Mole Home. And I think they go specifically for trips they take for the residents at the Margaret Mole Home. So that's one good thing we do. And we've done some other things. We've gone to food banks and helped pack food, and we do good works. So churches aren't, and we do them. We don't get tax credit for this. I know. I think it's wonderful that we do good works, but I've always thought that is sort of a specious argument, because first of all, churches do in fact get a tax break because they do good works. Right. Supposedly. Yeah. Therefore, they shouldn't be running around saying, "Well, look at us, we do good works." Well, that's why we give you the tax break. That's what you're supposed to do. And that atheists, as an intellectual type organization, I mean, nobody says to the Audubon Society, "What good works do you do?" I just think it's not a relevant argument. On the other hand, I think it's great we do good works, and I certainly applaud those of you who go do the good works. Well, some of us are more physically able to do them, and some of us are not physically able to do them, so we don't, and we do other things. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So. Now, there's been a few things in the news lately. Oh, my goodness, yes. There's always plenty of religious, atheist-type news. One of the things that I have noticed recently is that, the Pennsylvania legislature just is so busy. It doesn't have time to work on property tax reform, for example. Doesn't have time to do anything about the condition of the roads in the state of Pennsylvania. What does it do all day? Well, it passes resolutions, or not passes resolutions, brings forth resolutions and bills, some of which are really interesting, and I just have a few written down here. One is American Religious History Week. That's House Resolution 306. It designating the week of May 6th through 12th, 2013 as American Religious History Week, because religious faith was not only important in official American life during the periods of discovery, exploration, colonization, and growth, but also has been acknowledged and incorporated to all three branches of American government from the very beginning. That, of course, is completely not true, and it does make you wonder, first of all, where did these people go to school and where did they study history? But also, why are they so defensive and why are they so determined to put something like that forward? And then, you've probably noticed that the states around Pennsylvania have legalized gay marriage. Maryland has, Delaware has, New York has. Ohio hasn't, but on three sides, we're surrounded by people who have done that. Well, not if people in the legislature have anything to do about it. House Bill, and this is a bill, mind you, 1349, has proposed that not only reaffirmed Pennsylvania's support for marriage between a man and a woman, but also specifically bans civil unions. So they're going for broke. They don't want any of that there to come around here.
You know, it's interesting that in a recent election here for the 95th state representative, a gay candidate complained that people had said, don't vote for him because he's gay. I think that there's a lot of people in this area who are just would never vote for a gay person.
And obviously that's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that you can put directly to religious teaching, but I do think that religion has to take some share of the blame for that.
And I think probably the only category that people would be less likely to vote for someone would be an atheist. Many people say they would not vote for an atheist. And that's...
Which, now I'm going to jump ahead because that reminds me of a good atheist story. In Arizona, of all places, if you remember, if you follow these kinds of things, you probably know that Arizona was one of the places that elected someone who, although she does not call herself an atheist, is a very definite non-believer, and that's Kirsten Sinema. And she was elected to the House of Representatives from Arizona. Arizona is a very, very red state, so that was kind of surprising. Well, like most other states, Arizona has somebody who does an invocation, and the various members in Arizona take turns in the Arizona House Representatives, their state legislature. They have various members of the House of Representatives do invocations. And a gentleman by the name of Juan Mendez of Tempe was asked to do an invocation. And in his invocation, he first of all said, don't bow your heads. We need to look at each other because we need to learn to cooperate with each other, which is nice. He talked about his secular humanist beliefs, and he ended by quoting Carl Sagan. For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love. And that's, there's been some praise, there's been a lot of criticism. Several members of the House, Arizona House, were not happy about this, but he's also gotten a lot of good publicity out of it, and I say more power to him. That's
good for him.
Good for him.
As more and more people come out as atheists, I think we could take a lesson from the gay activists who, as more and more gay people came out of the closet, people realized, hey, they're not unique. They're not one in a million. They walk among us, and they're our friends and neighbors, people I know and I like. And the same thing's going to happen, I think, with atheism eventually. People will start to say, well, I didn't know I knew anybody who was an atheist, but now it turns out, George and Pam are atheists, and they realize there's other people who are atheists, and they're nice people who do nice things, and and they're going to change their attitude. It'll take a while, especially in some parts of Pennsylvania. I mean,
well, and other atheist news. There's a clip from CNN that has been all over the internet, and if you're interested in these kinds of things, you've probably seen it. But Wolf Blitzer was interviewing a woman, and she was there with her child, and Wolf Blitzer said something along the general lines of, well, you must thank God you survived, and the woman didn't say anything really, and so Wolf pushed it and said, you must really be grateful to God. And so she looked at him and said very politely, I'm an atheist. Well, I'm happy to say that atheist groups have raised $100,000 to help this woman for her personally, to help her rebuild her house. And it's just wonderful and such a breath of fresh air because, again, if you are even remotely on the same wavelength as we are, when horrible disasters happen, all the thank God we survived gets a little tiresome. And it was wonderful that she had the courage and the gracefulness, because she said it very politely and nicely, I'm an atheist. Not defensive, not angry, just a statement of fact. Just as someone would say, I'm a Baptist or I'm a Unitarian. It was nice to see.
Now, speaking of the Oklahoma tornado, the Reverend Phelps from the Westboro Baptist Church explained why it happened, in case you want to know, in case you'd like to know. What happened was some weeks ago, Jason Collins, a basketball player, came out of the closet. He's gay, and he is the first athlete male athlete in a team sport to come out of the closet. And one of the people who praised him, well, there were several people who praised him for doing that. One of them was Kevin Durant. If you don't know who Kevin Durant is, he plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And according to Reverend Phelps, the reason God sent the tornado is to punish Kevin Durant for backing up Jason Collins. Now, he kind of ignored the fact that many tornadoes come through that area, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas.
And lots of other people praised Jason Collins.
Yes, they didn't get hit, but I guess God didn't have time for all the rest of them. He just picked up.
Well, another thing I've never understood is that God, you'd think he'd have better aim.
Well, no, I guess he's punishing the whole region because, because one of them lives there. You get punished for the sins of your neighbors, I guess.
I guess.
But, the fact that the tornado hit where they normally hit, I guess God did that. He made sure that didn't go to other areas, I guess. But and also people are upset there. What happened there? That I'd be very upset if my house was destroyed and my dead children, dead family. I'd be very upset. But if you believe in God and you believe, because as the insurance companies call these, they call them acts of God, right? Shouldn't you say, well, God did what he had to do. God doesn't make mistakes. So God sent this tornado. We should be, if not happy, accepting that, it's God's decision to have sent a tornado.
The part of this that I never understand is when, say, a baby is saved. It's miraculous. The baby finds an air pocket, or there is in an air pocket in the debris, and they pull away the debris, and there's the baby safe and sound. Everybody says, "Thank God! Wasn't it wonderful? God saved the baby." Whereas 2 houses down, there's a baby who died. So I guess that was an evil baby or something, or God for some reason didn't like that baby but liked the baby he let live. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe God wanted the baby who died with him in heaven. I mean, it just, when you start pushing this stuff even a little bit, it makes no sense. No. And that's to us is what's so irritating. It just, if you would think about this for 30 seconds, it makes no sense. So why do you pretend that it does? In fact, I was reading, and I didn't think to look this up before I came, so I'm afraid this is going to be very imprecise. But the New York Times had a book review. And it was about a book where somebody was essentially making the case for God. It's a man who's dying, who was not really a very serious believer. He was sort of a believer, but he was very casual about it. And he's making the case for God. But what he's really making the case for is it's nice to believe in God. Not that there really is a God, but that it's a comforting thing to believe. And, it's nice to believe in Santa Claus, too.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a Santa Claus.
Yeah. Yes, I noticed that also from Oklahoma City, they were interviewing a woman, and she had lost her dog, and all of a sudden the dog came out. Oh, she saved the dog. I thought, well, God saved the dog, but he let the people die. And what? But
but you can't have watched that video and not gotten a little tear in your eye.
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't get a tear in my eye. I'm not that sentimental. There are other things that put a tear in my eye, but not that. Anyway.
Packers winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, that gets me. If I was a Christian and I believe that God killed my son and my family, I'd have to say, well, they must have been evil, because he saved so many people. There's so many people there that were saved, that they were in the terrible thing, and they hid. And so you'd have to, I would think, come to the conclusion that, well, we must be evil, or my family must have been evil. That's why they died.
Well, actually, I think a lot of times that is something that drives people away from church and away from belief. when something really inexplicable in their eye happens. A child dies, or a child suffers and dies.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that will lead people away from religion sometimes.
Well, there are two rationalizations there. One is that, as you said, God wanted this baby in heaven, and the other thing is God works in mysterious ways. Whenever you get an argument, that's usually that's the fallback position. God works in mysterious ways. That is very mysterious to send a tornado and kill 20-some people, including children. But
well, especially when you're only aiming for one.
Yeah, for Kevin. Well, I don't know, I guess maybe aiming for the team, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were eliminated from the playoffs, maybe, you think that would be punishment enough, but no, he had to go send a whole tornado and wipe out the town. And it wasn't even Oklahoma City, it was more. It was
right.
a suburb of the city. So.
Well, on the other hand, I think we have to agree that Fred is probably getting a little desperate. He sounds like he's getting a little desperate.
Well, from what we understand, his church is basically his relatives, and even some of those are fleeing.
Yeah, the younger generation, the kids, the grandchildren are starting to leave in greater numbers, and that, which again sort of figures.
Yeah, they're younger and they're catching on. As a matter of fact, he appears, they go protest at a lot of places. Now, I did hear that a rumor, I don't know if this is true or not, that at the Whitney Houston funeral, that they weren't actually there, they photoshopped themselves in. I don't know if that's true or not, but I wouldn't put it past them, because I don't know how they can afford to go. Well, they'll have jobs, I guess. They have jobs outside, and they spend a lot of money apparently just traveling around the country protesting.
Well, my guess is they don't waste a lot of money on other things.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I guess there's not a lot of carousing and running around. Yeah.
Well, I was talking about the Pennsylvania legislator a minute ago, and there is another. I'm not going to read all of this because it's tedious. I'll just give you a taste of it. But Representative Rob Kaufman sent a memo to House members explaining the rationale before bill he was going to introduce, which he has now introduced. It's House Bill 1427, the Student Religious Liberties Act. And what he wants this bill to do is prohibit a public school entity from discriminating against a student who engages in the voluntary expression of a religious viewpoint or on an otherwise permissible subject. Allow a student to pray or engage in religious activity or religious expression before, during, and after the school day in the same manner and to the same extent as the student may engage in secular activities or expression. Then I'm just trying to look at the ones that are most interesting. Prohibit a public school entity from discriminating against a student speaker based on the student's voluntary expression of a religious viewpoint on an otherwise permissible subject. Now that, I suspect, is directed at all the high school graduations where the valedictorians or the salutatorians want to mention something religious and have been told they cannot.
Yeah.
But this just is asking for trouble. If you're a school administrator, you just must want to put your head on your desk, and just cry.
Well, I guess, what he's trying to do is put religion back into the schools, which we took out 50 years ago. But they're public schools. They're for everyone. If you really want religious training for your children, you want your children to go to a school, fork over some money to go to a private school, a religious school. They can get all the religion they want there. Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing that's going on here is there have been a lot of issues recently where gay kids are being bullied by religious kids. And the families of the religious kids have said they are just expressing their religious opinion. They're not really bullying him. They want to save him. And I think this would protect the kids who do that. So again, if you're a school administrator, this is like, holy cow. What's going on here?
They don't need extra things to worry about. They should be educating us.
It's tough enough to be a school administrator without having all this other stuff going on out there.
Yeah, well, basically, like I said, they want to put the prayer back in the school, and I can just see this being terribly disruptive. Saying a child can, he can...
can offer religious expression or pray.
Yeah. So they stand up in the middle of a discussion on the Civil War and start praying.
And then, too, you've got the whole question of, was America founded as a Christian nation?
Yeah.
So you have kids who want to argue that point, and there really is no arguing that point, but there are people who think there are. So it just... Or I would think in science class, why didn't we think of that first? Because that's where it really will be a problem.
Yeah.
If people want to start, if for a term paper, when you're supposed to be talking about evolution or something in biology, you instead quote the Bible. How is a teacher supposed to grade that in light of something like this? So now again, it's just been proposed. Nothing's happened with it yet. So maybe cooler heads will prevail and this will just quietly disappear. We can only but hope.
Yeah, we do have a lot of legislators that seem to be pushing religion on us at every turn, and even the resolution of the Year of the Bible, which now some of the people there have said, well, it's just a resolution, it doesn't really mean anything. Well, first of all, I say, if it doesn't mean anything, why do you do it? Why are you doing things that don't mean anything? Do something that means something that maybe will affect our lives. And we think the Year of the Bible was clearly meant to say that if you don't believe in the Bible, you're a second-class citizen. You don't belong here. We all agree in the Bible. But that's what we were raised on. That's the basis of our morals and our laws, and so, which is, once again, not true.
And you do wonder if it's just a cynical attempt to get votes, or if people like Rick Saccone, the guy who has introduced several of these things, if he is trying to curry favor with God somehow, make God happy. I mean,
earn his place in heaven, no?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I really don't understand. And like I said, it would be nice if instead of this they could do something about the way public schools are funded in the state of Pennsylvania, or the way third-class cities get funding in the state of Pennsylvania. That would be nice.
Property tax. Yeah.
Property tax. That would be great. But no, they waste their time writing these silly things up.
Well, I think mostly it's to get votes. If they're in very conservative areas, they're all God-fearing people, and they support their religion, and they're not going to vote for anybody who doesn't, do nothing but introduce legislation like this. And but it also seems to me that someone who has to push their religion, they're pretty insecure. If you're secure in your religion, okay, believe in your religion, believe in there's a God and you're going to heaven, but why are you trying to push it on everyone else?
I think so too. I think, at our booths, when people come up to us and they're really angry. I mean, sometimes people want to debate us, but sometimes people are furious. I mean, they're just looking at us and they're red in the face and their fists are clenched. And I'm not sure why we would make you angry if you were really comfortable in your beliefs. What would be angering about us? If anybody is watching us just because you're fascinated with us devils on earth and would like to explain why we make you angry, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, give us a call. Because, like you said, we're living our lives, you live your life. Why are you angry with us? I mean, there are some people out there who think their goal is to save people. And they think they're doing the right thing by saving
They're
them.
Not angry. They want to convert.
Generally, yeah. But some of the angry people, you do wonder why are they going to still work? Some of them I feel like saying, "Calm down, you're going to have a heart attack here." My goodness, we don't have. We need.
Yeah, we have insurance, but we don't want to be responsible for your death.
Yeah, because some of them, you say they get all fired up, and generally they don't have much of a point when you talk to them. It's just, you should believe. Why don't you believe? And I suspect these are people who have never met anyone that they knew was an atheist.
And it's interesting because sometimes it's kind of hard to believe, but we do talk to people who have not only never met an atheist, they've never met anybody who dramatically disagrees. I mean, maybe they're a Methodist and they know a Presbyterian, but everybody sort of believes roughly the same thing.
Well, I think this is part of our political problem too, is that we get in groups, and like there was a letter the editor I saw the other day that said something like, "I don't know anyone who voted for him." Well, the person got elected, somebody voted for him. You just don't know them, and we're divided into camps. And people who watch MSNBC and people who watch Fox. I mean, they totally different worldviews. It's a totally different idea of what's going on in the world, and we surround ourselves with just people who are like-minded. And we never realize there are other people out there. And people say, "I've never met an atheist." They probably have. They just don't know they're atheists.
Okay, 25 years ago, people would say that they'd never met anyone who was gay. And you would think to yourself, well, yeah, you have. You just don't know. And with atheists, certainly with non-believers, if non-believers are really now 20% of the population, it's hard to believe that there's any adult who genuinely has not met a non-believer if they don't know.
Well, a lot of people just assume everyone's a believer. For instance, we don't run around saying we're atheists, everywhere we go. When I stop in the store, I don't, tell them, "Hey, I'm an atheist, check me out," I mean, and you just don't know. A lot of them assume, and just as there are a lot of white people who will assume because we're white, we're racist, and they will tell us, make racist comments and racist jokes to us, and we have to say, "No, we don't believe that. We're not like that." And so there's a lot of people just make assumptions that are way off base. You know. But that's it'll take a while for us to overcome that, I guess. But as you say, we're up to like 20% are, I guess, not identified as atheists, but as non-believer, as no religious preference, something like that. And it shows our numbers are growing.
It's one of those things where I think politicians are behind the curve. I think they're behind the curve on gay marriage and gun rights, but I also think they're behind the curve on non-belief. This business of having to say "God bless America" every time you sneeze, every time you're in front of a microphone, and talking about religion a lot. I think they don't have to do it anymore, anywhere near to the extent in most districts than they think they have to.
Well, one of the things is I think younger people are less religious than older people, and unfortunately, younger people don't vote in the numbers that older people do.
That's true.
So politicians are playing to the voters, and that's going to change over time. Now, of course, when we were younger, we thought a lot of things would be changed by now. When we got into people our age were in, but they change slowly. You know?
Well, and there are things that people do tend to get more religious as they get older. It's like I always think whenever I go to the symphony. When I first started going to symphonies as an adult 40 years ago, everybody was worried because younger people didn't go to the symphonies. Well, they're still worried about that, but that's because older people have the time and money to go to symphonies, and that's probably not ever going to change. And it's not really a problem except to the extent that not enough older people are going. And that's an issue that it'll be interesting to see. Well, we probably won't be around to see it, but if people in their 30s today are as irreligious, if that 20% stays the same and goes higher, it's actually in the 30% range, I think, for people in their 20s and 30s. If that group of people stays as unreligious after they get children, after they get older, that sort of thing.
And the symphony, you made that reference, they'd be doing better if you would stop ignoring the little letters they send us asking us to go to the symphony. So, but we do go sometimes.
We do go sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, there's been some Catholic news recently, too.
Oh, always Catholic news.
Always Catholic news.
For those of you who don't know, my wife was raised Catholic, 16 years of Catholic education.
16 years.
She knows the Catholic, still has family who are involved in the Catholic Church.
For those of you who have children and labor under the delusion that you can control their lives, my parents said I could go away to school, but to a Catholic school, so I wouldn't marry a non-Catholic. Went away to a Catholic school and met an atheist. So there's a limit to what you can control in your kids' lives.
Yeah.
In any event, let's start with Pope Francis. Good old Pope Francis. Everybody likes Pope Francis, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Hasn't there been some complaints about him?
Well, some of the more conservative Catholics are not crazy about him. But he's been in the news a little bit lately. First of all, if you follow this sort of thing, you know that the Catholic Church has been investigating nuns in this country. They don't think that they are subservient enough. They think that they are too independent. And there was some hope that when good old Pope Francis became Pope, he would call the dogs off. Well, he didn't. He reaffirmed his commitment to the jihad against the nuns. So that's one thing. Another thing, recently there was some excitement because he appeared to say that anybody could get to heaven if they lived a good life, including atheists. And atheists were like, wow, well, that's really actually sort of nice of him. Isn't that great? Well, of course, that statement got corrected pretty quickly thereafter. The official doctrine of the Catholic Church is that everybody in their lifetime will have the chance to accept Jesus and the Catholic Church as the one true faith and as the Redeemer, and that you have to accept that to get to heaven. So let's just say Pope Francis misspoke a little bit. And then there's been a bit of a scandal in New Jersey.
Oh, yes.
And this is interesting for a couple of reasons. What happened is there was a priest who molested boys. And mind you, this is not somebody who did this in the 1970s. This is somebody who did it in the 2000s. So part of the deal with him is that he went to counseling and then he was not allowed to work with children. Well, they didn't follow that. People were assigned to keep an eye on it. They didn't keep an eye on it, and he started working with children again. People, because there was publicity about it, some parents knew about it, complained. Eventually, and apparently, and I did not follow this story all along, I just heard about it after it was over. Apparently, there had been a fair amount of publicity in Newark about what was happening, and the Diocese of Newark gave several different versions of what was going on with this priest. If he was working with children, who was responsible for him. Well, what has happened is that people have resigned. And that's really unusual. In the Catholic Church, it has been unusual for people who have been responsible for keeping an eye on wayward priests to actually get in trouble when they don't. This is the third time that I know of recently that there have actually been repercussions. And this one was not legal, or it has not been legal in the legal system yet. The other two have been in the legal system. There was the guy the Monsignor in Philadelphia, who was secretary to the Cardinal and told the Cardinal about some priests who were pedophiles. The Cardinal took the list, said thank you, put it in a drawer and locked it. And the Monsignor, who actually I have some sympathy for, was convicted because he did not do anything else. He did not go to the police. He did not follow up. He just, once he gave it to the Cardinal locked the list in the drawer. That was that. Then we had a situation in Kansas City where there was a priest who was just your old-fashioned garden variety pervert. He was the kind of guy who took pictures of girls' skirts under tables. Well, okay, they sent him away to make him better, and then they assigned him to a convent, thinking that that would be a place where he wouldn't run into kids. And part of the deal was he was supposed to stay away from children. Well, he didn't. Being the priest in a convent, being the spiritual advisor in a convent, I'm sure the nuns were crazy about having him there, but anyhow, being a spiritual advisor in a convent is not a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. So he went out and started hanging around with kids groups, that sort of thing. Again, parents complained. Parents have finally awakened to the fact that not all priests are good guys to have your kids hang out with. Parents complained, but again, nothing was done. He was shifted around a bit. Finally, and this was at the bishop's direction. The bishop in Kansas City protected this guy, did not want anything much done with him. Finally, when the bishop was out of town, this is a part I like, a Monsignor who worked for the diocese went to the police and told them what was going on. And the bishop got in trouble. The bishop was eventually convicted of a misdemeanor. This is the first time anybody at that level has been convicted of anything, especially for basically ignoring somebody's record and allowing him to be out among the populace. They did not tell the people where this priest was assigned that he had this history as, again, pervert is the only word I can think of to say. Yeah. But people, because he was a pervert, people noticed it and complained, as I said before. So we've got 3 recent incidents where, a couple things. First of all, these are all people who are doing things relatively recently. So the story from the Catholic Church, oh, it's all the 70s, it was we lowered our standards in the 70s. No, it's not just in the 70s. It's still ongoing today. Probably not as great, because I do believe when they say that they are trying to screen out people with problems, I think they are, because it's cost them a fortune if for no other reason. But also, parents are more alert, and if, kindly Father Joe seems to be a little too interested in the kids, somebody notices it and says something. And now, when word gets back to those in power that something funny is going on and they don't do anything about it, there are repercussions, and that's a very good thing.
Yes, about time. Now, as far as Pope Francis coming in, he's a Jesuit.
Correct.
And they're saying the founder of the Jesuits was Ignatius.
Yes, Ignatius Loyola.
But he did not take the name Ignatius because he didn't want to be called Pope Iggy. But that's another...
I think that's probably not true.
Oh, okay. Anyway. But now when he was named Pope, I understand that your sister was in a church, conservative church, and they were not happy.
Yeah. Pope Francis is, by Catholic standards, liberal. Now, again, that doesn't mean he's going to come out for gay marriage tomorrow, or he's going to talk about women becoming priests or anything even remotely like that. But by Catholic standards, he is a liberal. I read something the other day. He is not living in the really elaborate papal apartments. He has his meals with people who work in the Vatican. He doesn't have them all by himself in splendor. So, he's probably a reasonably nice man. I have no reason to think he isn't, but he's certainly not somebody who's going to transform everything about the church.
I guess there were people who thought that was going to happen.
Yes.
And
those people were crazy.
Well, but they've thought that before, haven't they, with other popes?
More or less. John XXIII, who led the Vatican Council in the 60s, nobody had any expectations for him. He was supposed to be a caretaker. He was older, and he, in fact, did not live real long. Nobody thought, and this guy was a surprise. And the fact that he was from South America indicates actually what it indicates is that the power in the church the active church is in South America and in Africa these days, not in Europe, where all the previous popes had come from. So it's interesting that they reacted to that reality and picked a pope from South America, and picked somebody with who's much more photogenic, has a much better touch with people than Pope Benedict, who was a scholar all his life and, according to all indications, had really no interest in becoming pope. He is still living in Rome. You got two popes within a block of each other. Whether or not they see each other very much, nobody is talking about. Probably don't.
Yeah. So the Catholic Church is growing in South America and Africa. Is that right? Yes, that they're third world countries where it's growing. The more the European countries in North America, it's not growing.
Well, the pre-scandal really has done a number. There was something that we got the other day about weddings in Ireland. You read that?
I think so, yeah. So I forget exactly what it was. Maybe you can refresh.
I believe that it dealt with religious weddings are on the downside in Ireland. And Ireland was a really Catholic country. Catholic rules, the Catholic rules for divorce were the rules that Ireland followed. That was true in Italy as well. There were horrible stories about girls who were raped not being allowed to get visas to go to England because they were going to get abortions. Ireland would enforce the church rules and that kind of thing. And it's like the bubble just burst. When the abuse stories finally came out in Ireland, everybody just, it was just sort of over. And it's interesting to see that it's been that dramatic a change.
Now, the last wedding we went to was in Dublin, Ireland.
Yes, it was.
In a Catholic church. So
yes, it was.
We were, I guess, among the last. Now the end of that.
Among the few, anyway.
Yeah, few. Yeah, we went there. Yeah. So, anything else going on that we should?
Oh, off the top of my head.
Well, no, there was something I just received today about a school down in Charleston, West Virginia, who brought in. This is a public school. Who brought in a teacher, and what was the
well, she was giving a sex talk, and she is a religious person. It appears that her fee was paid for by the husband of a school board member, and in fact she spoke at a church while she was there. Now, she is not a stupid person. She knew better than to go to a public school assembly and explicitly talk about religion. But she said horrible things about sexuality and...
Her speech was labeled God's Plan for Sexual Purity.
My understanding is that the speech itself did not mention religion or God explicitly.
Okay. Well, but the name of the speech would tell you that it's God's
would
plan.
Be a clue.
Yes. Now, of course, the information she gave was mostly inaccurate. A lot of this is anti-Planned Parenthood.
Well, it's anti any kind of contraception, any kind of... It said that if your mother gets you contraception, she hates you. I mean, it just really, really silly stuff.
And things that condoms don't work. Yes, they do.
Oh, but tell what happened with the girl who protested.
The girl who...
There was a girl who became very upset with this and went to the principal.
Oh, yes, and she's... the principal got very angry with her. Now, she's a senior. She's been accepted at Wellesley, so she's obviously a smart girl. And the principal said he was going to contact Wellesley and tell them to rescind their acceptance of her. And then when he was called on that, he said he claimed he was speaking theoretically and never intended to call the school. Well, Wellesley found out, and they not only encouraged her, they said, you can come. Yes, we definitely want you. So that's fortunate that they're standing behind her. But yeah, she protested because she said this is outside the bounds of what we should be doing at a public school.
It was a required meeting, and people, after it started and people got the gist, they wanted to leave, they wouldn't let them leave. So this was really oppressive stuff and just silly, inaccurate.
She said some people thought it was satire at first, and some of them started crying, and they were they teach these awful things. Sounds like this fire and brimstone stuff, as you're going to hell if you do this, and I can't believe that the school would let a person like this in. Once again, and she is a graduate of Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's university. She has a degree in psychology, and she's not a sex expert.
Right.
She has a degree in psychology. And
there was just a study from Washington University in St. Louis showing that when contraceptives are readily available, the rate of abortion goes down, which is the sort of thing to which you would normally say, duh.
Yeah, okay.
But it's important to realize, we have trouble doing sex education in the schools because of a lot of religious pressure not to.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, the religious people are so upset about abortion. Well, use your head. I mean, if you make contraception available, there was a letter, was a Dear Abby letter, something like that, where the mother basically says, I don't want my daughter knowing about contraception because it'll encourage her to have sex, which is, gee, Mom, maybe you kind of got it backward there.
Yeah. Well, this article also speaks about the abstinence-only programs, and there's been several studies that show that there's no difference between the people who take the abstinence pledge and those who don't as their sexual activity. The only difference is that the people who take the pledge to remain abstinent, they don't use birth control because they're, that would be evil.
I remember back when I was a teenager, a lot of people didn't use contraception because if you planned, somehow it made it worse. If you could tell yourself you were just overcome with emotion and gave in at the moment, that somehow wasn't so bad as being the kind of girl who said, we're probably going to have sex, so I'm going to make sure he has a condom, or I'm going to see if I can get contraception. That was like lots worse than being overcome in the moment.
Yeah, and we are spending great sums of money on abstinence-only programs. Now that apparently we've changed some of the programs are not abstinence-only, but to me, you shouldn't be spending a dime on abstinence-only. They simply don't work. I mean, the reality is, even more so than when we were kids, sex is everywhere on TV. And kids, they know about it. It's not like it's a secret, and they're anxious to have sex. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you didn't have these things on TV. You couldn't even say pregnant.
But people knew what sex was?
Yeah, we knew. I knew what it was, and I knew it. I knew I wanted it too. That's what I knew. And the best contraception is girls who say no. To me, that's the best. But
see, you put all the pressure on the girls. Don't do that.
Well, no, I put pressure the other way. It didn't work. But yeah, but kids, I mean, sex has a good reputation.
Yeah, it's earned its good reputation.
Yeah, people like it. So to think that and you get young people, they're in love, it's going to happen. And if they're not prepared, well, then we get unintended pregnancy.
And it's just one of those things where evidence just doesn't seem to matter. You can talk till you turn blue about how if you provide contraception to people, you don't do anything about their level of sexual activity. You just keep them from having